Today we will be learning how to box and pour a mandibular master impression with the Alginate technique. For the boxing procedure, we will be needing a master impression, 2 magnetic strips, mixing bowl, mixing spatula, a blade handle with a number 20 blade, a ruler, 2 rubber bands, and a vacuum forming plate. First, place the master impression in the middle of the vacuum forming plate. Adjust the magnetic strip so that you can fit the master impression inside and leave several millimeters between the impression and the magnetic strip. When satisfied with the circumference of the magnetic strip, place a rubber band to hold it in position during the rest of the boxing procedure. Mix around 3 to 4 alginate scoops, and when a slightly runny consistency is achieved, place it inside the magnetic strip. Sink the master impression in the alginate until the material comes all around the borders of the impression. It is very important to make sure that the impression is parallel to the floor. This will minimize the trimming after the stone has been setted. Wet your fingers to make it easier to adapt the material around the borders. The goal is to extend the material around 2 to 3 millimeters away from the impression borders. At the same time, we will be also creating the landing area with the flat surface of the alginate. If part of the alginate runs inside the impression, don't worry, we will remove it in the next step. Remove the rubber band and the magnetic strip. Next, trim the alginate from the borders of the impression. For this step, we will be using the number 20 blade. Very carefully trim only the alginate and avoid disturbing the master impression. The goal of this procedure is to leave the alginate around 2 to 3 millimeters away from the borders of the impression. This way, we will transfer the depth of the vestibule to the master cast, and at the same time creating the land area. If you look closely on the borders of the alginate, you'll find a small step. This was created when the alginate was poured inside the magnetic strip. So, take one end of the magnetic strip and match it to the step, and adjust the rest of it to create a perfect seal. Place a rubber band around the magnetic strip. This will help to keep it well adapted. Before pouring the master impression, we need to make sure that we have the appropriate space to create the cast base. For this, we will place the mixing spatula on the upper border of the magnetic strip and measure from the highest point of the impression to the spatula. Ideally, we will want to have around 50 millimeters of space, although we only need 10 to 30 millimeters of thickness for the base. This will give us some extra material to trim the cast if needed. If there's not enough space, we will need to use another magnetic strip. For this, we will take the end of the new magnetic strip and place it flushed with the end of the old magnetic strip. Then adapt the rest of it and create a perfect seal. This will minimize the leakage while pouring the stone. For the pouring procedure, we will need 2 packages of quick stone, which is a type 3 stone, a mixing bowl, mixing spatula, a ruler, and the boxed impression. For this procedure, we will prepare 2 quick stone packages with the recommended powder-water ratio. For the complete denture master cast, we don't want to vacuum the quick stone. This is because it will make it easier on a future step during the fabrication of the dentures. The small porosities created by the air bubbles during the pouring will slightly weaken the master cast, which later, after the dentures have been processed, it will make it easier to break the cast and recover the final prosthesis. Place the box impression on top of the vibrator, and then, in small increments, start pouring the stone on the tongue area. This way, the stone will first run through the alginate and then cover the impression. Since I had around 19 millimeters of space for the cast base, I don't really need to pour the impression all the way to the border of the magnetic strip. After the stone has been completely setted, the next step is to remove the master cast from the boxed impression. Your master cast should look somehow like this. Now, the next step will be to trim the cast to the ideal dimensions. As we said before, we would like to have the cast base around 10 to 13 millimeters of thickness. Trimming the cast base, make sure that the residual ridge is parallel to the floor. When trimming the land area, we want to leave it around 3 to 4 millimeters of thickness and 2 to 3 millimeters away from the depth of the vestibule. The last step is to index the cast with a stone burr by creating 2 grooves perpendicular to each other. Ideally, we want it to be around 2 to 3 millimeters of depth.